Go, Tony. Welcome. You are on the screen. Thank you
All
for your
right.
patience. Thanks for being with us. How are you, Tony? Quite a day to join Towel Stream, I must say.
Yeah, I've been watching this morning, and it's been a little interesting to say the least. I'm just catching as you're coming on here. I heard the scuttlebutt. What's the rumor of what's going on here with the O'Keefe family? I didn't quite catch what was going on.
Yeah, so this is just literally within the past 3 to 5 minutes. There was some discussion on another channel about the health of one of the O'Keefe family members.
Oh,
Nothing confirmed. Obviously, as someone who's following the case, you can
sure.
sympathize. A lot of people, when they
Yeah.
saw that, became very concerned, and this was just an initial discussion.
Sure. Well, I sure hope everything is okay. That's always scary when that stuff happens.
Absolutely, Tony. And as I get you centered here on our screen for the viewers, I've talked about your YouTube channel, your Twitter today. Could you take maybe just a minute, tell us a little bit about, your channel, where people can
Sure.
find you? And then I have some viewer questions and some questions myself.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah. Anywhere you get podcasts, just search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Anywhere, like I said, you get podcasts. And on YouTube, you can just search us there. Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. You'll find us there. We're a true crime show, and we do all sorts of true crime, not just Karen Reed, but obviously right now, that's a pretty big focus. But we cover everything that's the big cases out there, from Koberger to Lori Vallow Daybell, who's actually back in court today. And I haven't even seen anything about that yet because I'm so engrossed over here. But you name it, we talk about it, and love to hear everybody's comments on the cases. So we kind of work through them, with not getting on one side or the other until like it's just really obvious what the hell's going on in a case. And we've kind of walked the line of the middle of this one from the beginning. And this round, things have seemed a lot more obvious, and evidence as to what was really going on here, I think, is evidenced most by Karen's own words in those documentaries, and when she leaves court every day too.
Yes, and I have a number of questions for you on substance about
Yeah,
the case, but I think
sure.
the thing that is on everyone's mind is so much of this case has been defined by the pernicious, toxic atmosphere, the targeting of the witnesses. But today we heard a defense witness stand
Yeah.
up there and say Alan Jackson, and this was Kelly Devers, a former Canton police dispatcher, say that not only she had no idea what she was called, but that Alan Jackson threatened her with criminal charges unless she would lie for the defense on the stand. How did you react to that? How did you process that? What did you make of that moment?
I think there's been so much conjecture that's come in on this case that's been non-favorable to Karen Reed. It's kind of stunning because it wasn't even, she just kind of added that into the question that was being asked by Alan Jackson. I thought it was pretty shocking and stunning. I'm sure that did not read well to the jury, being accused directly of saying, we want you to say this and we're going to threaten you basically if you don't. I saw Alan Jackson then come back and say, have you ever heard of a defense attorney being able to charge anybody with a crime? Of course, a defense attorney can't charge anybody with a crime, but yes, things can be reported and gone around, which is how she explained it. I think the candor and the tone deafness of the defense is really quite stunning in this. I mean, these are decent attorneys, very good, experienced attorneys. I don't know what the hell's going on in their mind. I can't speak for it, but I got to say, they're probably exhausted. They're human beings as well. And they're being shot in the foot every time they turn around by Karen and what she says out loud, whether it be leaving the court or another clip that's coming out. They got to be frustrated at this point. I know they're doing everything they can to represent their client, but I think we're seeing a real kind of breaking point, just like we did with Alessi the other day, with his issue of judge that he's raising his hand at me and that's making me feel uncomfortable, whatever he said. It seems that I feel like we're at a real human breaking point with some of these guys where it's just, okay, I don't know what else we're going to do here, but little bumps in the road are feeling more like mountains, I think, to them right now.
It's so well put, and it actually leads me into a question. So I know you maybe have heard a little bit about the towel motif. We have towelettes, super towels, etc. But one of the towelettes, Jew Drops, who is here in the chat all the time, had a question for you, and I'm wondering what you think about this. So there's obviously a huge distinction between the first and the second trial. The federal probe's over, Hank Brennan's involved. But what do you think so far about the dynamics between the prosecution's case in the first and second case, and how big of a difference maker is Hank Brennan?
He's the definitive change in this, and his approach, I think, has been very humanistic. I found him to be, at the very beginning, I was like, he's really boring. But as he got going, he's not. Like, he knows how to deliver this thing. And a lot of this, obviously, it should be decided on facts. It should be decided on evidence. But this is a case that has, from the first trial, it's been about likability. And that is always a huge part in any case, whether anyone wants to admit that or not. You got to be likable. And in the first trial, Karen, kind of likable. There was kind of a moot point. We didn't know a lot about Karen in the first trial. We didn't have all these video clips of what she says in the first trial. Now we have that. And as far as Brennan being a part of it, he's been able to walk everybody through this, I think, with such expertise. He's led people through this and told them the story in a very specific way, which is a hell of a lot more effective than the way they did last time, and really painted the picture of who Karen Read is with Karen Read's own words, and obviously supporting testimony from other folks. But I feel like most damning pieces of testimony that are painting the picture of who Karen is have come directly from Karen Read. It doesn't necessarily come from Jen McCabe. It doesn't necessarily come from anyone else. It's Karen's own words that are, I think, sinking her ship, in my opinion. And there isn't yet, the big boogeyman with the police department. Now, do I think that there was a really, not a great investigation and there were a lot of things that could have been done different? Yes, without a doubt. But it's not as dramatic because they aren't the only boogeyman here. And Karen's character has been painted in such a way by herself that she's to such an unlikable point that now that we're getting to the point of maybe we'll see Proctor, maybe we won't, or we're seeing evidence of what Proctor said in those texts, they're not landing the same. And I don't condone anything that Proctor said. I think it was horrible and completely out of line. But if people are talking crass and people are being really, cold about things, people are going to be able to relate to him more and go, oh, that's why he felt this way about her. Not saying it's right to say that out loud the way that he did in any way, shape, or form. But she's very unlikable, at least by the way that she's presented herself. So I think it gives a little more context to why maybe others were kind of feeling that way as well about her. I don't for a minute buy that when Proctor was saying, she's going down, it wasn't a way of like, we're going to frame this on her. More so, the evidence is there. I mean, look at this. Like, what happened here, the system will do what it's going to do, is how I kind of always took that one.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about Hank Brennan teaches advanced trial strategy, right? So
yes.
Hank Brennan has picked the best witnesses. This was a shorter, condensed, very easy to understand case with Karen's own words being used against her. But I'm wondering in particular what you think in terms of these Karen clips combined with the fact that Hank Brennan's version of trial strategy seems to be, and this is where I was going, Michael Proctor's text. Once the defense brought them in, Hank Brennan didn't just cross on them. He brought in other parts of them to show, like, you're exactly right. It wasn't that they were setting this girl up. They knew that Karen Read hit John with her car, and those Proctor texts ended up quickly being used against Karen by Brennan. And if you notice, Brennan did this earlier. He brought in some of Proctor's texts on direct, forcing Alan Jackson into the position where Jackson started bringing up the Higgin text to get it ahead of the affair, which worked against Jackson. It's Hank Brennan laying traps and Alan Jackson falling into them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't know, at some point, like, how do you, I mean, once these things are out there, it's got to be kind of hard not to fall into them because they're just there. And a lot of it is just the own words of Karen that are out there to walk into. I don't know. It's really stunning just how much the personality is playing a role in the direction that this case goes. But on top of that, I feel the evidence has been extremely strong against Karen this time, where we're getting down to literally within 30 seconds of where O'Keefe's phone stops working and where there, I know they can't show a vehicle strike, but where there likely would have been, why the car was recording. Um, at this point, yesterday I was driving back from Kansas to here, and I had 4 hours to listen to all of Friday's testimony. That was boring, but it was 4 hours of them basically going back and forth on about 30 seconds of what could have happened in that window. Even if it is 30 seconds off, let's just say it is. I mean, I don't think it is. I think they got the timeline down. But if it even were, what does it make a difference? I mean, the phone locks at certain times. It's within 30 seconds. I think a reasonable person would go and say, yeah, she hit him. Look at all the evidence around. Look how these things stop working. I know we're really trying to get this down to the second, but even if there's room for debate there, I think the outcome is still the same.
No, absolutely. And what it naturally leads me to talk to you about is look at the distinction in the chip off for the Lexus, right, between the first and the second trial. So for some reason, you had Maggie Gaffney, Karen's expert during the first trial, doing the chip off of the Lexus board, right? It has 3 chips on it, and then it has a micro SD card. 2.4 gigs of 8 gigs of data she gets the first trial, right? But then the second trial, when Hank Brennan's expert from Aperture does the chip off, we get the 6.6 gigs of data from the second 2 chips, the infotainment chip that had the backup event between 12:32:04 to 12:32:09, and then the black box EDR data. And that was enough for Hank Brennan to get the running clock from the moment that Karen turned that car on at 12:13 outside the waterfall, synced with Waze data. That was what I believe one of the Aperture experts found. And it was the running clock that really narrowed in the time. Now, the reason this is relevant is you might know, like Universal Timer example is monitored by a network of atomic clocks around the world. Clock drift is natural due to the rotation of the Earth and things like that. So all Hank Brennan was really establishing with that clock drift was we will be precise here because data that was not available in the first trial is now available, and I think there's an untold story about why Maggie Gaffney didn't get that data. What do you think?
I don't know the answer to that question, honestly. It is fascinating that we didn't have that in the first trial, and then we get it this trial. But the fact that it is there, I mean, it says a lot. I mean, I just take the data alone, and the fact that they can correct this. I think we really, or they have more data. It doesn't necessarily align with what the defense, obviously wanted, but obviously we saw more. Evidence today with Kelly's testimony that they kind of stomp their feet when things get more factual or change or are clarified because it doesn't go in a narrative. I get it. You're there to represent your client and you want things to go a certain way. But unfortunately, objects in the rear view mirror may be closer than they appear. That's sort of a pun on this where it's not always exactly what it looks like. And to me, it looks more like, okay, more data is going to answer our question as to what happened to John O'Keefe, not more speculation about a jawless dog and that doesn't have DNA attacking someone. And I don't know. I guess if they're going to argue it now, it'd have to be within that 30-second window. He was abducted, ripped into the house, and then taken out there, and then 50-some people are behind the conspiracy. It doesn't make sense.
Oh no! Listen, I put it all together, Tony. If you account for an anti-gravitational dog who doesn't leave DNA, this very special type of dog, then yes, it all fits together perfectly.
Yes. I hear they have him at Petco this week.
Yeah. Tony, let me ask you though. I have a few more case questions. I want to talk a little bit about ARCA in a little bit as well. But we had a combination question from Bossy Texas Chick. Her super towel cat Bella is actually one of the mascots of Towel Stream. And this is also a question from Macy, and then there was another super towel PK. And they all have a similar question, which is first they all say, Tony, we love your stream. We're so glad you're with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then they said, were you always on the side of Karen being guilty? Did you start impartial, or was there something that turned your view on this case?
I started impartial. If you go back and watch our coverage or listen to our coverage, I don't know if we were doing video at that point, but we certainly have audio coverage. I was very, very harsh of the police last time, and I still am to a certain extent. But I think the facts have come to light. The FBI has done their investigation. They were looking into all of these oversights and all of these issues. And was this done perfectly? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I can see the perspectives better this time, I think, on how things were done, why they were done, explaining the blizzard conditions. I thought with the prosecution this round made a lot of sense as to why, things that were very questionable. The red Solo cups. Well, it's now or never, guys. This is all we have. Get this. We wish we had something better, but this is what we have to do. And in the spur of the moment, you do what you have to do. Could there have certainly been other things that were done better? Should Proctor have recused himself? Yes. But I was very harsh on that round one. I think what really changed me on this, or not necessarily changed, but just swayed me kind of more in the other direction, was Karen herself. Just watching these documentaries, listening to her own words, seeing the personality type that she appears to be. And I'm not here to diagnose anybody. I can't say that she's this or that. No one can. Only a clinician can. But the traits that she seems to be examining are very narcissistic. I've seen a lot of people throw out the word borderline and such into the equation. And again, cannot diagnose her. I'm not saying she is. I'm not saying she isn't. But I have a lot of experience in that world in my own personal life with people who've been very, very much in with that I don't want to say affliction, but disorders. And once my big point on this psychology wise or psychologically has been once you know the playbook of a lot of folks like this who seem to exhibit and demonstrate their personality to be like this, you can predict what else they're going to do and the moves they're going to make and what they're going to say and how they're going to handle it. And it's been pretty much textbook for Karen Reed most of this time. And you go, oh, that's why she thinks this, or that's why she's saying it this way, when there's been some very just absurd, bold statements and ways of looking at the family and ways of viewing this that way. And I know she's fighting for her life and Karen is out for Karen. And I don't blame her to be, but at the same point, you got to be about for yourself for the right reasons. And it's become very evident, I think, to me that she's not out for herself for the right reasons, not because she just doesn't remember and she's fighting for her life. There's clearly a consciousness of guilt here. There's clearly at least alleged consciousness of guilt that she knew. And in my opinion, I think she fled because she didn't want to deal with how is this going to make me appear to all of these other people out here? And that's a really dark way of looking at the world, because when you're doing that, you're discounting reality and you'll go with whatever you need to go with. She clearly was considering that she hit him early on. But then suddenly the magical man came in and talked to her attorneys and they said, oh, well, look at the people in the house. And suddenly that was the way to go. So to me, her personality and her admissions of, yeah, I know I said it, but I didn't really say it that many times. And the cold and crassness to, I think, the family, the whole situation in general. This is someone you loved, and this is how you're handling it on a psychological window or angle. That's how it's really affected me to go, this is, I recognize this type of behavior. And when you couple it with the evidence now, especially with the vehicles and the timestamps, I think we know what happened to John O'Keefe now. Now, can we prove it was intentional? Or I don't know that we're ever going to be able to do that. But I think beyond a reasonable doubt, to me, it's been shown that she hit him. Did she know that she hit him? I think we're pretty close to showing that too, but I think that could be up in the air a bit.
Yep, and of course, there's no intent requirement for malice, second-degree murder, or involuntary manslaughter. It's just doing an underlying reckless act that a reasonably prudent person knew or should have known would pose a strong and plain likelihood of death. But a few notes, because you made some great points. One, how great was it during the Canton Police Department audit that those former DEA agents found that the use of leaf blowers to process snowy crime scenes not only wasn't novel, but it's best practices in like Alaska, where they actually run into this kind of issue.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I mean that was one of those things where I thought when I first heard it, like, and to most people, you go, well, that's absurd. You're using a leaf blower and solo cups, but context. Look at it wasn't like summer in 75. Like this is what they had to do in a nor'easter to do the best that they could. And just watching these guys' testimony and such, they were being resourceful as best as they could in a really bad situation is how I end up looking at it at the end of the day.
yep. And so to tie two questions together, a lot of this became an exercise in mass psychology for the defense, public relations, maybe some bought and paid for protesters. Sure, there's a core movement, but it leads me to two questions. Because I was listening to your recent interview with a psychological profiler or an analyst. They had written a book too. Very, very interesting interview. And it made me think that this type of person like Karen is almost like Zygmunt Brzezinski writing the Grand Chessboard, right? Someone who thinks on that international diplomacy level, not in content. She's not a diplomat, but in form, right? Bentley professor, economist, powerful father, etc.
Sure.
And it made me think about two things. One, was the Free Karen Reed movement artificial? And then two, tying into something bigger, we know that the same unit, the MSP unit that investigated Karen Reed, also investigated the death of Sandra Birchmore. Is it possible that although the attention paid to and the investigation, the federal probe of John's death was going on, it was actually cover, and is the big secret that we're going to find out in hindsight of this whole thing, that Karen Reed and maybe even Aidan Kearney helped the federal government stumble onto the cover-up of Sandra Birchmore's murder? The reason I say that is that probe literally started in August of 2023 of Sandra's death, which is right after that summer of chaos surrounding Karen and Aidan. And if you've ever read Black Mass, would it really be out of the question for the FBI to give a wink and a nod to someone like Karen and Aidan to draw all this attention to the MSP, generate leads and tips, and then do an investigation? And of course, remember that old DOJ in Boston, Rachel Rollins, Dustin Chow, Josh Levy, no love lost there between them and the Norfolk DA over unrelated political issues. That's actually why Rachel Rollins got fired from her position as U.S. Attorney, forced out. She started a pretextual federal probe into the Suffolk DA because that person, Kevin Hayden, beat her ally, Ricardo Arroyo, for the Suffolk DA seat, launched a probe, leaked it to the Globe and Herald, and got pushed out of office for it. You think something's going on there, Tony? Was this really deeper than people see?
I don't know. I mean, I feel obviously the two get connected pretty quickly because you share, some of the same individuals, some of the same cast of characters in this. So what were they connected by the investigation? Like, did something lead them to that? I don't know the answer to that question. I really can't speak to it. I would have to do a lot more research in that area, which I just have not done. But certainly the Birchmore case is crazy. Obviously, we know that's a big cover up over there. And I think just on a general public layman's level with all this, you see that over there and you see how horrid that case was, and just how methodical those officers or that officer was in grooming Sandra Birchmore from such a young age, and then just how they treated her literally, like subhuman, like a piece of meat, of just, I'm not trying to be crass here, but passing her around and things of that. It's god awful. And then you start going, oh, God, well, he was an officer over here. Who did he know? Who was involved in this? Who helped and looked at this case and said to Birchmore, oh, yeah, we're going to go with what you said, that this is just, it was a suicide. Who did not cross a T or dot an I or just looked the other way? And if you're cool with doing that, what else are you cool with doing? And then you start to look, okay, the company you keep, these other officers know that. And it really, it's an infection. When you have a really bad cancer in a group, you're going to find other cells that may, be precancerous and could, be very detrimental to the being. So it certainly has infected this whole thing. I think there certainly are probably really good, decent officers and investigators involved in this case, but it certainly taints the whole damn thing. So as far as them being connected in terms of with the FBI, I don't know the answer to that question. But obviously they did do an investigation into the officers here, and came back with basically the conclusion of it was a shitty investigation, but we didn't find a conspiracy or some sort of a wrongdoing.
Sure. And Tony, I know we were going to go back to the other point about the profiling of Care and the operation, but just quickly about Sandra Birchmore. Yes, you nailed it. I know you said you're going to do more research, which I encourage. Sandra died February 1st, 2021 at 9:23 p.m. By February 4th, that next Monday, when the Canton PD found Sandra dead, within 48 hours of February 4th, so February 6th, they turned over to the state police evidence that Farwell was at her apartment at the time, and that Farwell had been saying to people if Birchmore wouldn't get rid of the baby she was carrying, he would take care of the problem. And, of course, Tony, to tie it up with a neat little bow, John Fanning, the officer for the MSP, the Norfolk DA unit assigned to the Birchmore case, who cleared Farwell, used to work in Stoughton with Farwell.
Yeah, I mean, and to give another example too of just where there seems to be, like, the cancer of this case ends up affecting other ones. You also have the case of Anna Walsh and Brian Walsh in that whole thing. And obviously, I think Proctor was the one that was involved there initially. But that's a case, too, where I've been following it from day one, where before we knew Proctor had his hands in any piece of this thing. And that to me, yes, you have a guy who's shown some very poor judgment over here talking to his friends. But that's a case that seems pretty cut and dry with the Google searches that Brian Walsh did on his wife. I don't suspect just because Proctor had a piece of existence here that was flawed. So you got to look at everything individually, and I know you are. And there's a lot of things that can certainly taint it, but does it mean that the whole thing needs to be thrown out the baby with the bathwater? No, I don't think that.
Yeah, and so let me take you back to that recent interview you did about the psychology of this. It was actually in the Brian Walsh case that we first got confirmation the federal probe of John's death was closed. Then the Canton police confirmed it, Helena Rafferty, before she announced her retirement, then Hank Brennan, in that order. But tell me, obviously, Brian Walsh couldn't go out there and run a PR operation and get all this attention. No, what was it about Karen Reed? What was the psychology, not just of this woman, but the people around her? And I'm not asking your opinion. Can you tell us what you learned from your recent interview, your excellent series with this professional, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name, who wrote the book about this kind of psychological analysis?
I'm not great on terms all the time, but there is a group think here that's going on, and it's the same way that you see cults develop. It's the same way you see large, sometimes political movements develop. People want to belong. People want to feel that they're part of a group. It's just natural. It's what we do, and especially if you feel slighted at something in your own personal life, you may end up gravitating towards others you see that you feel as if, I could relate to this in some way, shape, or form, or I see myself in that person. Even if you don't have a lot in common with them, you may view yourself in this way, shape, or form. And there's a lot of, wound collecting here. There's a lot of, as Robin Drake on my show says, he's the retired FBI special agent, chief of the counterintelligence behavioral analysis program, that wound collecting that goes on, basically being a victim a lot. And we see a lot of that with a lot of the FKR folks and such. They're kind of communally becoming part of this victim, and they feel that they're doing the right thing. And, some people can be influenced fairly easily. Some cannot. I think initially you had a lot of people who were in the FKR movement that really thought they were on the right side. And I don't blame them. But now, you look and there's like 5 people out there in front of the courthouse, not a mob, because I think a lot of them used deductive reasoning and just their own ability to think and realized, hey, maybe we were sold a bill of goods, maybe we were misled. And that's good. You can change opinions. You can realize, hey, maybe I don't want to say duped, but upon new evidence coming out, upon new information coming to light, my opinion's going to change. And I think that for a lot of people, that has happened. For some people, they're dug in, and it's far too painful. It's almost like kryptonite for them to dig out of that. They'd rather go down with the ship than say, hey, maybe we should chart a different course here. And that's human psychology. Some are going to go with that, some are not.
Yep, absolutely agree. And just to push this a little bit further, what is it about Karen? I've called it a Mona Lisa smile with a soulless glare.
Mhm.
There's something about this woman. It's not her speaking style. I wouldn't call her very articulate or well spoken. She's intelligent, but she's not a generational orator. She's not some celebrity. She's not like Alan Jackson caliber. So, what is it about her? Is she seductive? Is there? It's more than just the case. It's Karen
Yeah,
Reed.
I mean, her looks certainly have attracted a lot of, I think, men to the case. Men that seem to almost kind of worship her, and talk on the phone for 4 or 5 hours a night, 5 to 6 days a week. Those type of guys. And I think that there's some of that going on here, but there's plenty of female followers, straight female followers of Karen Reed that totally back her up. I don't know if it's initially the reaction was this was a woman who um people believe she was being wronged, she was being taken advantage of by this boys club, and she was a scorned woman. And I can see that at the beginning, where you don't have a lot of evidence on the surface. You may just glance at this and go, oh gosh, this is something to look at. And then you learn more and more and go, oh, it's not quite what it appears to be. But she went down that road. She and her attorneys went down that road, and they made that the identity of the case. And then she screwed it all up by talking. She was, if she would have just been quiet and just maintained that I've been scorned, there's these people that are trying to take advantage of me. But then she started talking, and then she became very, very, very unlikable. And that's where everything shifted for her. There was that likability factor in the first part because I think a lot of people could relate to her, and they saw themselves in her. And then as she started talking, I think a lot of people started to go, well, that's horrible. I would never say that about even my worst enemies, or I wouldn't talk about anybody that dies this sort of way. And the behaviors, and I'm speaking more to why I don't like her than why people did like her. But I think these are the things that turned her away. The kids stuff. We learned in the trial here that basically what she presents in these documentaries turns out to be almost the opposite in reality. I was getting closer to the kids. John didn't like it. Turned out that was actually the opposite of what was going on. I kind of guessed that, though. The way that she handled herself that night, going back to the house with the kids, and saying that she's lying in bed there next to them, and she's calling him these horrible names. You're cheating on me. You're effing another woman. You're all the things that she said. I know I'm paraphrasing, but she says she's doing this right next to the niece. Whether she did or not, I don't know. But clearly just not anyone with a parental bone in their body that has any sort of clue how to act around these kids, if this is in fact how it all actually went down, allegedly. The character is what has really done it for me. It's just a really kind of a gross way of handling life and society and situations and people around her. Very, very manipulative is how I think it reads to a lot of people. And that's come with time. I don't think initially it came that way, but as it's sunk in and we've dissected this more and more, I think people are seeing and perceiving Karen in that way, more so than a victim.
Yeah, and it does make me wonder just how poorly Karen executed on this public relations strategy. Because a classic, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm just offering an opinion,
Yeah.
a classic manifestation of like parental narcissism is very much cares what Jack and Jill next door think. The
Yeah.
reputation is very important, but how they're perceived as a parent in public is important. But the actual bond, the in-home relationships aren't actually that important. In fact, they're
Yeah.
often quite abusive. So is what we saw here, was this the PR campaign really just the fact that Karen didn't want to attach to her name unequivocally the truth of what she had done and who she was as a person? Was it really her coping with her own portrayal?
I'm not a doctor, so I'll say that too, and I'm not diagnosed, but I think that's part of it. I think it was her trying to cope with the reality, and yes, her portrayal, because that her image of what people think about her, in my opinion, with a lot of folks that behave like this, that's usually number one. I can't speak for her, but let's just say someone like her, and then anything that's going to come and challenge that is going to be kind of like a kryptonite moment. Either they can kind of handle it, but they can write it off and they can kind of go another direction with it. She seemed to be kind of like, could I have done this? But didn't necessarily want to take accountability to any of it. And then when the attorney came back with the mystery man that said, look at the people in the house, it was an off ramp and she was able to take it. I don't know if she believes it. Maybe she does at this point. I don't think Karen honestly has a huge memory of what actually happened that night. I think she's still has trying to put some pieces together. I think there's enough in that brownout memory that she knows that something bad happened and she ran away from it. Maybe doesn't even remember exactly what or how, but in the back of her mind, these pieces are there. So she maybe can't conclusively say that she knows she hit him, but I think there's enough that she knows she probably hit him. But that again, that's kryptonite to someone like that, and the brain will do what it's going to do to self-preserve itself and not have to take that information in. And if you have this large group of people over here who are going to support this new direction that your mind is going in, you're going to latch onto that. And she had a ton of that support. So she went in that direction. Again, that's my non-clinical, I'm not a doctor opinion, just looking at the way that she's played this out and kind of the psychology of it, and go, yeah, I mean, that's the playbook she's running with.
And I just noticed Court will be back around 2, so don't let us keep you if you need to jolt.
Okay.
But I have to ask, because we have like 14 minutes until 2, I have to ask this question, which is, so much of this seems centered around money. She was a finance professor. Her father leveraged his home. She sold her home. She had these millions of donations coming in. God knows how much got sent to her personal Venmo. You had other people running fundraisers for her. Do you think she was looking at those projections and then the funds just stopped coming in? And then that's what we're seeing now, a movement decimated, a defense without any money, and laid bare for the world Karen's humiliation. And then my question to you, I know you won't have an answer, but where did the money go?
Did the money, I mean, I don't know that the money's dried up. I mean, she still does continue to get donations. So did that affect the case, or like this all thing all falling apart because more people are seeing this? I don't know that that's it. I mean, I think they're going to do what they're just trying to do the best they can at this point. I just think the facts are sinking her more than the money drying up is. Who knows where the money went? I mean, it's got to cost something for that hotel. I mean, there are general expenses here. Does it add up to the amount that she's gotten? I have no idea. The fact that she finds it appropriate to be buying, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 suits. I don't know the exact dollar amounts, but I know that they've been expensive. And walk into court and being dropped off, basically like.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, goodness. Give me 1 second. Let me try to restart that. Let me see if we can get Tony V back on here. I'm sorry about that. That was, see, I didn't have the money to pay for my Zoom, so I went back to a free plan, and you only get 40 minutes. Oh, goodness. Let me text Tony. Hold on. I want him to be able to rejoin. Hold on. If we can't get to save back, I'm so sorry. It's back at the same Zoom link. I can't believe it. All right, there you go, friends. That is an example. Oh, Tony's back. Tony, I am so sorry. Tony, you are not going to believe this. I only pay for the free version of Zoom, and it caps meetings at 40 minutes. I'm embarrassed.
Yep, that happens.
But I also feel like that's like true to the spirit of this. Like we were just talking about this high, cultivated sort of very intense PR apparatus, and then you have kind of people doing it on the grassroots. And you have a studio, a microphone. I am doing it one man on a computer. You're back with us though. But continue, Tony. You were saying something so interesting. I'm sorry to deprive the audience of that.
I'm trying to think but I think the money had anything to do or has anything to do with how this is falling apart in court? No, I just think it's falling apart because it's falling apart. But where did the money go? I have no idea. I'm not saying that they're doing anything nefarious with it, but it's got to be going somewhere. I think the only people who are, and I don't know that, I don't know if it falls into the line of any sort of crime either. Is, are you're asking for the Karen Reed Defense Fund and you're openly saying you're not paying your defense attorneys? I think the fault lies with those who decide to donate, honestly, at the end of the day. If you think this is a great way to spend your money and it turns out you just help, buy her another dinner at Capitol Grill and another suit, okay, I guess that's what you like to spend your money on, because it's pretty much right in front of you where it might be going. Maybe it is, maybe, I don't know. I can't speak to it. I have no idea. But yeah, to answer your question, no, I don't think it's affecting the case one way or the other.
It's interesting because I do agree she kind of built this kind of case. She had her experts before the money really flowed out. But it is interesting to me. Maybe this is one of the last questions I'll ask you before we go back to lunch here, back to court. This is Grant Smith-Ellis and Tony Brueski talking about the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed trial. Court will be back into session at 2 p.m. Eastern. How do you compare the defense from the first trial to the second trial? I didn't find Bob Alessi very effective at all on crime. I'm sorry, and I'm not being overly judgmental. On just as an objective analysis, he was not a very good lawyer.
No.
Did that cause a very big issue out of the gate as you were watching for the defense as well? To me, I thought that the Reed defense putting Alessi up there over and over and over during Hank Brennan's case in chief kneecapped him right out of the gate.
I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, and that's why I wonder a bit about the echo chamber that they're living in. I wonder how much are the attorneys in the echo chamber as well, and they're just paying attention to what the FKR folks have to say, because that's not a great place to be. If you need to be paying attention to all sides of this, so you're understanding how others might be perceiving you. But that's been one of the biggest, I think, issues in this case to begin with. Whether you're on this side or the other, there's not a lot of people who are just kind of in the middle going, I'm willing to hear both sides. I feel like I've always been willing to hear both sides, but I think a lot of people just by nature, they dig in on one side or the other. And I feel like, I mean, obviously you're the attorney, so you're going to want to do that, but you're going to want to hear what's going on beyond your echo chamber. So I don't know if they were just hearing that their side saying they did great, because we saw them online thinking that they, prevailed. And on the other side, everybody thinks they did a great job too. So I don't know. I don't know if it was just tone deafness to what was going on, or just, I'm going to knock it out of the park today, guys. Just every time it was like, ooh, that didn't work out well. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense. It might have just been, some rough days in court and things not landing where they thought they would.
Yep, and I also wonder how much of it is, this isn't necessarily a prosecutor versus a defense attorney. It is Hank Brennan versus a defense team, and it isn't the defense defining the narrative or the Overton window, the range of acceptable discourse. It is Hank Brennan. I've been in that courtroom, as I'm sure you saw. I was there for the niece's testimony, John's niece. Hank Brennan controls the atmosphere of that courtroom. The jurors hang on everything he says. He kind of controls how people ebb and flow in that courtroom. The literal energy of the courtroom is defined by how he's acting. That seems to me to what's really thrown the defense off. It was almost like when that witness, I believe it was Dr. Isaac Wolf, when, or maybe it was Welcher, when one of the witnesses said, "And what's your name, Attorney Alessi?" Completely threw. It was so simple, so brilliant, but such a microcosm of what's been different. The witnesses, the state's in control.
Very much so. 10 times more in control than they were last time. And again, personality plays a big role in this. And Brennan has a personality that people like. He's coming across far more likable than Alessi, than Alan Jackson. And it's a shame, because I feel like, I won't say it's a shame, but if you're looking at the defense side, I feel like it's a totally missed opportunity where Karen Reed is coming across as your most unlikable character here. Come on, guys. If you're wanting to do the best for your client, you're going to have to come across as likable more than normal, because that's about all you got, because Karen's not going to change, and you can't change what is going to come across in those Karen clips. So you better be liked by that jury and not come across as, very childish or just short or disrespectful to witnesses, because it's not reading well at all.
So in light of that, Tony, second to last question here, What do you think about the chances of conviction on one of the three counts at minimum after this morning? Because that was their one hope. Jackson or Yannetti during the case, the defense's main case, kind of becoming likable to getting something. But it all fell apart. It all literally, this was the worst thing that could happen. The jury seeing Jackson get accused of threatening a witness if they didn't lie on the stand, and Jackson got combative. So what
Yeah.
are you thinking after this? I agree with you.
I feel like we've been sitting here that she's going to get the manslaughter charge. I feel like that is beyond a reasonable doubt now. And it just keeps getting worse. I think we could get to murder too. I think me personally, if I was on that jury, I'd be voting for it. But have they convinced everybody? I don't know the answer to that, but I feel like she's going to get one of the charges for sure. Again, there's still many more days there here. So we don't know what else. Reasonable doubt is a big thing. I feel like they've already proven, though, beyond a reasonable doubt, but that's a different meaning to everybody and every one of those jurors.
Yes, and I was going to say, so having been in the courtroom, I'll tell you why I think the defense has been apoplectic for weeks. The jurors hate Karen. I was watching them, 14 of the 18 of them, not just dislike, I think they might hate her. And I think the defense knows that's why they had to switch things up mid-trial. But Tony, with just a few minutes left here, first of all of the towel friends, I don't know if you saw that there's actually a chat above your head. It has just been scrolling with love and appreciation for you. So all the nice comments are just right above your head.
Well, thank you, everybody up there. I can't hear you.
You are definitely a super towel. 78 countries around the world, I think at one point were saying hello to you.
Awesome. Hi, 78 countries. Nice to meet you.
Yes, I think the Faroe Islands is the most remote. So yes, I was having fun saying hello, Faroe. But yes, Tony, I have to ask you this because this was one of the closing questions from Macy, actually. So what other cases are you planning on covering after this trial ended? After this trial ends, you teased us a little bit with some of the other work you're doing. And are you, in a similar vein, what got you into true crime? And we have about 3 minutes, so please take it away.
Some of the big ones. The Kohberger case we are following in depth every week. We still put a lot out about that. The other ones that are coming up, obviously Diddy, we're following pretty good. What's her? Adelson, yes, you read my mind. I can picture her in my mind with the shocked look on her face. Donna Adelson. Those are some of the big ones. The Delphi murders we still are following because I think that was a case where Richard Allen got railroaded, and I think that's a if anybody wants to get behind a case where somebody there's a lot of hard evidence that shows that this person should not be not only convicted but should have never been looked at this way. That's a big one in my opinion. So we're always following that and watching the appeals. We'll see what happens with Murdaugh, if there's going to be a second trial, which could be very interesting because of Becky Hill's actions. So pretty much anything big, we're following it. And then we have individual off channels for each case. So in case you just want to follow that case, you can follow that too. How did I get into it? It's always been an interest of mine. I've been doing podcasts. I've been doing radio since I was 14 years old. Left that about a little over 10 years ago and started doing podcasting. We have a channel called Real Ghost Stories online where it's just people sharing ghost stories. And that's how I started doing it. And then ended up moving into the true crime stuff around the time the Kohberger thing started and the Idaho 4 and just started following that case. And was just really kind of blown away by the community and following these cases. And I kind of it made me excited to be on the air again and doing this sort of coverage in basically real time of cases. Because we cover a lot of things in real time versus long, serial type storytelling of things that have already been done. So we very much like an active type newsroom on current cases. And I don't know, I just love it. It's very fun. I met a lot of great people. Here's some of our contributors on our show, Robin Dreek, Coffin Daffer, Siobhan Scott, Eric Faddis that we have, all just really great people. And the other guests that we have on as other guests are really wonderful. And it's been just, It's fun because I my biggest thing is justice. I think truth is a very, very paramount thing in our world, and we need more people that are out there looking for it. And I know a lot of people disagree with me and you on this case, but it's important to stand up for what you think is right and being able to hear both sides too, and have a conversation. Bob Mata is one of our contributors, and he's a good friend of mine, and we can have a conversation and we can walk away and go, okay, I respect your side, you respect my side. And we need more of that going on in this world.
Yes, Tony, well said, both for the tactical benefits of not getting caught in a hive mind, and then also in the spirit of disagreeing without being disagreeable.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, Tony Brueski, folks can find you at the Hidden Killers True Crime Podcast. I know that you also have a Twitter. We've posted it in the chat. I think you may have more friends and fans in this chat than me, Tony Brueski, and I was thrilled to spend my lunch hour with you. You are amazing. You have so many wonderful insights, and I think hundreds of people expressing that sentiment is for a reason, and I'm honored to have interviewed you.
I appreciate it. Anytime. Let me know. I'll be happy to come back.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day watching the trial. I'm sure we're going to now hear all the Towel friends fawn over you. You have a great afternoon, Tony.
All right. Have a great one, Grant. See you later.
Ladies and gentlemen, our very first interview on Towel Stream. I think it went absolutely wonderful. Oh, that was great, Tony B. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'll admit it. I only have the free version of Zoom, so we had to go 40 minutes and then restart. But you know what? It went great. Tony adapted on the fly. We finished up right around 2 o'clock. Mandy Strong let us know about some buffering, so I reduced some of my system resources. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to log back on to the Karen Cam. Yes, we talked right through lunch with Tony Brueski, and definitely make sure to check out Tony's YouTube and his X feed, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, that was an excellent guest. We all owe such an enduring debt of gratitude to Tony for his time, and also for being so technically proficient. I think Tony probably realized, he was like, oh, this is going to run out of time, but I didn't see the timer, because he knew right away to join back on when that 40 minutes ran up. Oh, goodness, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Who's ready, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to switch over now. Let me bring back up the Karen Cam. Let me bring back up the Law and Crime feed. Oh, goodness, what a great interview. And yes, Towel's microphone is definitely on its last legs. Towel, a lot of things in Towel's life are on their last legs, but I'm going to fight through, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad you liked the interview. Listen, Tony is an excellent broadcaster, a very substantial amount of skill. I was multitasking a little bit there. Tony was gracious enough to let me even we had our first guest on Towel Stream, so Tony was gracious enough as I began and set up the Zoom and made the image nice. He was gracious enough to talk to you all. He is an excellent soul, ladies and gentlemen, ferociously interested in the pursuit of truth, and we are grateful to Tony Brueski for joining us today. Oh, look at all the Towel friends. Oh, all of 19, that was a confirmed rumor. It was very difficult timing right as we were ready to start the interview with Tony, but confirmed rumor, not true. Thank goodness. Oh, goodness, ladies and gentlemen.